think what it did is just expanded my mindset about different possibilities.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Peter O. Estevez Show. This is your host, Peter O. Estevez. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Another week and another Latino on our platform. Another guest, and this incredible guest, his name is Andy Canales. On our quest, on our search to look for leaders to be part of the Latin Talks, we came across the incredible resume and profile of Andy Canales, and our team reached out to him and invited him to be a guest on our podcast. And we also hope to have him in the very near future as one of our Latin Talks speakers. You know, Latin Talks is a series of talks and conversations where your local leaders share the answers and solutions to the challenges and adversities that one faced. You know, growing up, I always wanted to figure out the secret to success. And what I realized was that there wasn't anybody in my community that could show me that secret. And for a long time, I struggle and I fumble and I fail, but I persevere and continue to my quest to find that success. And eventually I started looking for people that had created a path, that had created a way, that had created a system, and I followed them and I learned from them. And now I want to be able to apply those teachings back to our community. So with that in mind, I want to welcome our guest today, our friend, Andy Canales. Andy, welcome to the Peter O. Estevez Show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm really excited to be here.
Andy, you know, your story, like many of our stories, you know, I often say that we don't share our stories because they're unique. We share our stories in service because they're the stories of many. And when we share a story, we give others an opportunity to share their stories and to speak up and to see their value and to identify with the challenges, but also to identify with the adversities and the answers and solutions that we can face together to create a better future generation. So, you know, I love that I love reading your bio and say, I first set my eyes on Pepperdine University, the 800-acre campus nestled in the Santa Monica Mountains as a little kid when I helped my mom clean houses in the wealthy parts of Los Angeles during the summers. We wake up at 5 in.the morning, catch multiple buses to Malibu, Bel Air, and Beverly Hills. And Beverly Hills community that felt like a world away from MacArthur Park, the low-income immigrant enclave I grew up in. Wow. What a touching story. Being one of 13, I can completely relate to that. But you know what's fascinating to me more than anything else in your story? That today, as we record this conversation, you are in Boston, starting your MBA at MIT. What a privilege and an honor. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's, you know, it's an incredible path. And, you know, I'm very reflective of the people around me that have helped me to get here, whether that's been from the encouragement of my family, you know, support from friends, mentorship from teachers and from others that are older and wiser than me. It truly takes a village to help someone that's growing up in a low-income neighborhood with the odds, as the statistics, you know, lay them out, as the odds stacked up against them. So I'm just really reflective and overall just feel really grateful.
MIT is not something to just kind of dismiss easily. You know, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man in the world, was a student at MIT. So, you know, from the young boy riding the buses to see his mom clean houses, how does that feel today? And how does your mom feel about seeing you where you at today?
Yeah. Oh, my parents are just so thankful. I mean, so grateful, so proud. I think I say thankful and grateful because, you know, they grew up in El Salvador, very, you know, modestly with very little. And it was their dream to come to the United States to achieve more, to lead a better quality of life. And I think an even bigger dream for themselves was for their children, you know, to go above and beyond to what they aspired to. And so I think they're thankful that I've had these opportunities. They're proud, and I try to return that gratitude back to them as well, because it's because of their sacrifice and their dedication that I am here. And I always tell people that I admire immigrants all over the world, because I can't imagine what my parents went through. Like, I put myself in their place. I grew up in the United States, and I have a lot of privilege here now, a great life. And I imagine if a civil war broke out here and I had to flee and immigrate to Germany and learn a completely different language. And maybe my degrees didn't transfer, and I had to start by, you know, fixing cars or whatever it is to survive. And then I raise children who identify with a different culture. I go through that mental thought process, and it just makes me really admire people like my parents and immigrants all over the world that just, you know, pick up whatever they have and go somewhere else to try to build a better future.
Absolutely. We never take in consideration the trauma, the mental health issues that they deal with, the post-traumatic stress, the burden on the children and on the family. I mean, there's a lot that goes with that we never talk about. And I think we have not had an opportunity to have these conversations, because we go from moving from another country to a new country, but we continue to work and operate and live in a mindset of survival. We live in a state of survival. We live from paycheck to paycheck. You know, you talked about it very eloquently in your bio, riding the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning and seeing the Pepperdine University 800 acre campus from the bus while you were going to the mansions in Malibu and Bel Air and Beverly Hills, you know, and let me, what were you thinking as a young boy? What were you thinking when you were up at 5 o'clock? I remember getting up in the morning with my dad to go do whatever labor, whatever work that he did at the time, right? I remember that vividly. What were your thoughts at that time? Did you ever imagine that you would actually be in the campus? Or what was that mindset that you created in order to actually manifest that into reality?
Yeah, well, you're right. So, you know, what was transformative for me in a way growing up was actually cleaning houses with my mom, because as you mentioned, we used to go to Beverly Hills and Malibu and Bel Air. And what that experience did for me is that it opened my mind to a different reality, to a different world, to a different way of being. And that's not to denigrate where I came from, where I was coming from. But I think what it did is just expanded my mindset about different possibilities. And I was so taken aback because we were growing up in poverty, you know, all of us in a very limited household in Los Angeles, that I just became obsessed with going to UCLA and Bel Air or Pepperdine and Malibu. And I really had no idea how I was going to get there, because I went to some pretty challenging public schools. But the ticket for me, if you will, was that I randomly got accepted into a magnet math, science, and technology high school in the outskirts of Los Angeles, where I met some great teachers and a life-changing college counselor who helped me put me on that path to Pepperdine.
I love that. But I want to touch on a couple of things that you said earlier. One of them, you said early on in our conversation, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to rise as a community. But what happens when our village is broken? What happens when our village is not connected, unified? What happens when there is no village? And I think that we see in a lot of our communities, primarily the lower income Latino, Afro-Latino, the brown and black communities, there's a lot of those communities that they're not sure, they're not communities. They're really, and this is not to be offensive, because you even said it, this is not to be disrespectful to your parents or my parents. They did the best they could with what they had. And we get that. We get that. But I think that our mindset should shift to know that we don't have to settle for what we have, that there's other opportunities out there. And I think that you find your motivation by being able to look at these beautiful mansions in Beverly Hills and Malibu and Bel Air and see, gosh, I want to do that. And I think there's a lot of our children that never lived that community, and there's no inspiration within that community. What was it that you did particularly that you said, you know, because there's other boys that chose the gang, or chose to become a mechanic, or choose to get the girl pregnant, or choose to become a waiter or waitress. I'm not denigrating anybody. I'm just talking about the realities that happens in this communities each and every day. How do we create more Andy Canales out there? How do we make sure that we save that little Andy that is 8 years old right now, and that is riding the bus with his mother because that cycle has not stopped, Andy.
Right.
Okay? That cycle stopped for you, but it has not stopped for other Andys and other Juans and other Pedros and other Chuys and other Latinos across the US that still go through that. What was it in particular that, besides the fact that you saw that there was something bigger and better on the other side, wherever the other side is, right? But what was it?
You know, I think it's a couple of things. I think number one, you know, my parents were, from a very early age, instilled in me the value of education. Like, one of the earliest memories that I have is as a 4-year-old learning the alphabet in Spanish and having books, even though my parents didn't have a lot of money, but we had a few books. And I think what that did for me, and now I understand, given that I've worked in education, is that instilling the value and love of learning early on can really make a difference in a child, in someone's life. So I think that's number one. I'll also add that my parents were a little threatening as well. They said that if I didn't like school, that they would be more than happy to send me to El Salvador to work in the fields. And so that did put a little bit of fear in me. But I think the other thing as well is I just have always had a love of learning, a little bit of ambition, and I think just a desire to get ahead, to accomplish more, to challenge myself intellectually, and to do things that kind of foster that. And so I think it's, besides my parents and that inner drive, it's influences, you know, it's friends, it's teachers, it's mentors. And I have to say, I feel like I've gotten pretty lucky in life that somehow I end up becoming friends or having a teacher or mentor that kind of sees that in me and pushes me to get ahead.
Wow. Wow. Is that really luck, or is that a fact that you pursue that?
You know, I've thought about this a lot. I think Oprah is the one that says luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not completely luck.
Yeah.
There is preparation and hard work, but there's a little bit of serendipity. But who knows, Peter? I've been trying to figure that out, because there's a part of me sometimes that feels, I don't know if guilty is the right word, but definitely like I think about my family in El Salvador. And by just sheer virtue of geography, I was born in the United States, but I could have been born in El Salvador. And just by that decision, my quality of life, my whole trajectory is different. And I just wonder, like, whether it's that or something else, what's the role of serendipity or chance that kind of plays into the path that we take?
Well, I think when we get in alignment with the universe leads us where we need to go, right? And I think
Yes,
a
yes,
lot of
yes.
us fight that. I think a lot of us fight the universe. We want to go against it, but when we surrender, we said, "Take me where you want me to go." Okay, and you're willing to learn and grasp the tools. But you said a lot of key things. You said that the right people, the mentors, the people that took you under the wing. I don't want to minimize your accomplishments. So I want to talk a little bit about your resume. You're a social entrepreneur. You have been a nonprofit executive. You have been an educated and one of the founders of Latinos for Education in Houston, which increases Latino leadership in education, which is something that is dear and dear to my heart. You have served on multiple boards, and you were also selected Houston Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. You are the son of Salvadoran immigrants and the first in your family that graduated from college. You are a former teacher. You have equity and social commitment to entrepreneurship and education, but more importantly, you're a graduate of Pepperdine University, Hunter College, currently doing your MBA at MIT. Congratulations one more time on
Thank
that.
you.
I want to talk a little bit deeper about education. You said learning, and learning has been a key component in your success and your accomplishments. But there's also a plethora of misinformation in the world today, primarily through the social media. We're a generation of connectivity. We're all connected. Through our phone. Our phone can take us from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook to Pinterest to LinkedIn to Twitter to whatever social media platform. And there's also a slew and a plethora of opportunities for education, alternative educations that we had never had the privilege to be able to have, at least when I was growing up, because I'm a much older generation than you are, Andy. But today we have from ebooks to YouTube to e-courses to podcasts to social cyber mentors, people that we can follow and learn their habits and their rituals and the daily activities and model. Those things were not available when I was growing up, but the minute that they became available, I jumped up that wagon and I soaked in as much as I could so I could bring it back first to myself, to my household, and then expanded it out into the community. But I think there's something that is going out there, and I want your take on it. There's a lot of, I'm going to call it misinformation or misguided information about the importance of education or going to college. First and foremost, I want to clarify that not everybody needs to go to college, but everybody needs an education. I want to preface with that. But there's also a lot of people that say, well, look at Mark Zuckerberg. He dropped out of college, and he's one of the richest men in the world. Or look at Elon Musk. He dropped out of MIT. Okay. Or look at XYZ. He doesn't have a college degree. He's accomplished these things. Tell me how you feel about it and what your thought behind it. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, to me, I think first and foremost, it starts with the data. And so when we look at the data about the earnings that individuals with college degrees or a post-secondary education, when you look at their lifetime earnings compared to those with only a high school diploma, I mean, I think on average, someone with a college degree, if I'm not mistaken, makes about $1 million to $1.5 million more over the lifetime of their career. And so if you're making a bet, if you're a student right now and you're making a bet about what path is going to help you earn and live a more prosperous life, it's safe to say that having a college degree, especially a college degree in an area that is in high demand, will definitely help you. Now, are there anomalies and exceptions? Absolutely. You've mentioned a few of them, but I think those are anomalies. And I think what I would encourage students to think through is to look at like the whole data as a whole, and to make the best decision for themselves. And And college is one path. There's other lucrative careers that require post-secondary training, certificate, vocations. And it's all about just being smart and wise about your career and seeing where the demand is going to be for the type of skill sets you want to employ, and then finding the best program or path that can develop those skills.
I completely agree with you, but there's also another factor that I want to get, and I want your feedback on it. You know, the two people that I cited, Elon Musk and obviously Mark Zuckerberg, they're anomalies, right? They're unicorns. They're there are two people in a pile of 9 billion people in the world, right? And there's also other factors. You know, they come from a pedigree of education. You know, I cited, you know, my mother had a third grade education. Part of me, sixth grade education. My father had a third grade education. The realistically is that statistically, I was doomed not to go to college had I followed a different path. I was doomed to repeat the cycle of poverty, of dysfunction, and I did for a while. I did for a long while. You know, so I think it's also important to recognize that some of those anomalies, okay, they do have a certain foundation. They have a foundation. They have social capital. Okay, they have social influence capital. They have a parent, you know, I know that read somewhere that Elon Musk's mother has two degrees in science. Okay, so they come from a high level of education, which is a completely different conversation in a household where your parents have a third grade education or a sixth grade education to where your mother is a scientist or has 2 degrees in science. So I think it's important for our audience and for today's generations to realize that yes, there is those anomalies. Yes, there is those opportunities, but let's not take that for granted. Let's build that pedigree into our current generations, okay? So we become those anomalies in the next future generations. Would you agree? Give me your feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely correct. I think you have to look at the whole context of an individual. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, we all start, you know, at different places in a race. And depending on your parents' level of education and income, those are factors that have a significant influence on the direction of your life. In some ways, it makes life a little bit more accessible. Like if you even just share advice,
Yes.
like who do I turn to just ask for advice when I'm struggling in college or in graduate school? I'm trying to make a professional decision. I love my parents and they're always there for me, but I can't quite have those conversations with them. But Elon Musk, on the other hand, when maybe he was at a similar trajectory, could have someone, I imagine, in his life that could give him advice and counsel. And that in itself is worth a lot. Yeah. And so I think all of those things that you mentioned are absolutely true. And so what we have to figure out, I think, as Latinos and as those of us that maybe started a little bit behind in the race of life, is how do I build advantages for myself so that I can continue to speed up and get ahead and go in even faster at times. And for some, that's entrepreneurship. For some, that is getting a higher education. For some, whatever that is. But, you know, we have to figure out how do we build advantages for ourselves.
You know, that's an interesting point, and I want to change the subject. You say, how do we build advantages for ourselves, right? And that goes back to the principle of being in the airplane, and if there's an emergency and the flotation mask comes down, or the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on yourself before you put it on your child, right? And I think that a lot of times when we are on our journey to education, to success, to find our path in life, a lot of times we want to take everybody with us, right? We find that something is working for us, and we also want to do that. And a lot of times, at our own expense, we end up sacrificing our dreams and our goals because we could bring the whole familia with us. Okay, how do we deal with the guilt and the shame and all of that comes? I think as Latinos that we are, right? Because there's also guilt trips. Did you experience any of that from family members, even your parents? And how did you cope with them?
Oh, yeah, that's such a great question. I remember when I moved out of my house, I was living with just my mom and my brother, and our friends were like, "¿Y cómo vas a dejar a tu mamá sola? You know, you're gonna," because I moved into the dorms at Pepperdine and I wanted to experience the college life, and I feel guilty about leaving my family. You know, even though I was just going about 45 minutes away, and I felt guilty after then living in Miami and New York and Dallas. I just lived in Houston. I just moved to Boston. I'm a grown man and I probably still feel guilty at times because, you know, family is an important value for in our community. Relationships is an important value. So anytime that you do something individualistic, like in the United States, or you're pursuing a dream, it kind of goes against that value just a little bit because it may mean you're kind of going away for a bit, or you know, and so I do experience it. How do I deal with it? You know, at the end of the day, I just kind of have to remind myself that the people that love you the most really want what's best for you. And I also kind of challenge myself to use whatever I gain, to use at least part of it to give back to my community and to give back to my family moving forward.
Absolutely. And you know what? The reality is that the better prepared, the better educated, the better we are financially, the greater asset we are to our family and to our communities, right? Because
Exactly.
we are able to contribute in ways that we were not able to do it before. So that's an incredible point. Now you have been an educator. You've been the co-founder, you are the co-founder of Latinos for Education. Tell me today, what are the biggest challenges that we face in our country with our younger generations and education?
Oh, there's so many. I'll say just a few. I think number one, early access to quality early childhood education is really important. Research shows that 90% of the brain develops before we're age 5. So the experiences that children have before they turn 5 years old are fundamental and formative for the rest of their careers. Yet, not all of our children, especially Latino children growing up in poverty, are accessing a high quality pre-K education or quality early childhood education. So if I had a magic wand, I would want every child to access a quality early childhood education. That's number one. Number two, if I had a magic wand, um, in Texas or in Houston, where I was at most recently, only about 35% of Latino children in third grade could read on grade level. If you're not able to read on grade level by third grade, you're 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. And if you're growing up in poverty, you're 16 times more likely to drop out of high school. So if I had a magic wand, I would want every child to have an amazing, well-prepared, and supported teacher in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. And the third thing I would say is, at least in the United States, kids are out of school for about 3 months. That is completely antiquated.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was out of school watching TV at home with my brother growing up, not learning anything. My counterparts were at camps, having enrichment activities. Talk about building advantages. They were building advantages. So if I had a magic wand, we would improve and provide kids with quality out of school time experiences.
Wow. Wow, that is incredible. And I want to talk a little bit more about early education. Okay. You know, the reality is, and this please to the audience, this is not in a way of denigrating our culture, our communities. This is in a way of bringing awareness of some of the issues that permeate and perhaps in many households have never, ever been talked about. We cannot find a solution to rise in our community if we remain silent. And the reality is that a lot of the issues that permeate in our households are as a result of generational belief system that you don't rock the boat, you stay quiet, calladita te ves más bonita, don't, keep that safe. Sometimes we got to take risks. And today, if we want to shift the generational wealth, the generational education, if we want a prosperous Latino community in years to come, we have to start now. You talked about early education, first, second, and third grade, and how the child's brain is developed by the age of 5 years old. In fact, 50% of what we become as a human being is already engraved by the age of 5 years old, based on some data reports. Okay, so the reality is that if they don't have a adequate education system, okay, that really in our situation in disadvantaged communities has to be extra stringent, because we already have the disadvantage that we have a lot of parents that are not educated, so they cannot even be the support system for the children. Okay, so with that in mind, Andy, whose responsibility is that? Is that our government system responsibility, or is that our responsibility as parents?
I think I have to say both, honestly, because I think obviously as a parent and as a family member, it's first and foremost our responsibility. Parents are children's first teachers. And I think that we have to do everything that we can to support the child at home. I think it's in society's best interest that we have an educated population and an educated future workforce as well. And I think that the investments that we make in education don't just benefit the individual, they benefit all of us, because research shows that individuals who are educated, they're less likely to rely on the government. They are less likely to be involved in the juvenile detention system or be involved in crime. They are more likely to be tax-paying, contributing citizens. The benefits go on and on of why education is a good thing. So I think it's a responsibility of both.
Andy, I don't know about your circumstances, but I'm going to talk about mine. And as a young boy, my parents never talked about education. There was never a plan for me to even graduate from high school. There was never, I don't ever remember that conversation. Sure, my mom did the best she could to make sure she got us up, got us to school, make sure that we were clean and fed and all of that. That I could never negate. Okay. But there was never a plan for college. There was never a plan. I think that it was almost an unspoken agreement that, at the age of 15, 16, you're going to find work after school. You're going to contribute to the household. And at the age of 18, or whenever you graduate from college, from high school, if you graduate from high school, you're on your own and you're an adult. Okay. I have, obviously as my life changed and I lived in different communities, I saw different types of styles of parenting, and I understand why some of that stuff happens. But what resources are available out there for parents to realize that they don't have to have the burden of college education themselves? Even you talked about the fact that during summertime, our children are out of school for 3 months. While the other in affluent communities, those kids are in camps. They're taking piano lessons. They're taking alternative courses. They're building their networks for the future. They're building they're associating with the future lawyer, with the future CEO. They're associated with people in different areas. They may be 14 or 15 years old, but we often forget that those children are going to grow up to become adults. Okay. So
Yeah.
what resources are available for the parents out there that maybe they could, or what can a parent do that realizes that I could make it through college. I didn't do it, but how can I guide my children to make sure that they at least have a shot at graduating from high school and perhaps entering college?
Yeah, you raise a really good point, because even if a parent is well-intentioned, they may not know what they don't know. And so this is where nonprofit organizations and resources can be really valuable. So I helped start Latinos for Education in Houston. And one of the programs that the organization has there is called Familias Latinas por la Educación. And it is a program that helps Latino families understand the educational system in the United States and how to advocate for their children. And I think we need more programs like that. Avance is a well-known nonprofit that has a program for parents with very young children, 1 to 3, 4 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. And they help the parents with how to create quality early childhood experiences at home and what to look out for in terms of their education. So those are 2 examples. I know that there are many and they kind of vary city by city, but we need more nonprofit organizations and services like that to help our parents who are well-intentioned, may not be educated, but want the best for their children and just need a little bit of help on how to do that exactly.
And let's go back to the early development years of a young child, the first 5 years, and also the first 3 years of education, right? You talked about the first, from PK to maybe 3rd grade. Those are fundamental years to build. What are some resources and also maybe some tips that you would recommend for parents to do in order to rear a child that has a higher propensity to become a better reader, to become more interested and engaged in education? Because we know, science knows, research shows that those are the years that they are going to really kind of become the compass of who they become, right? So
Yeah.
some tips and some advice that you would give to parents that they could do, primarily those parents that are lacking the resources, or even, as you so eloquently said it, sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is just being mindful of verbal communication. So there's a lot of research that shows how important it is to talk to children and engage in conversation with them, even since the days they're babies and toddlers, even if they can't talk back. When you're going to the grocery store and you're picking out fruit, talk to your child. Say, wow, look at this apple. Look how red it looks. It's very bright. Let's touch it. That's sensory as well. So verbal communication is really important to developing language, and language is fundamental to literacy and reading. Sensory skills are really important as well to early childhood development. So I think having children touch and do all these kinds of things, and play exploration is great. That is sometimes a mindset shift in our culture, because we're taught to be quiet and we're taught to be obedient and to respect and to not question back. But those are going against the things that research says are really important to developing language, developing observational skills, developing sensory skills. All of those things wrap up in the gift and the skill set of reading. So that is, I think, one of the biggest pieces of advice. The second thing is, even if you can't read, just having picture books, just having books from a very early age instills the value of reading and the value of learning. Even if you can't read in English, for instance, just asking questions. Well, what do you see? What is this interesting? How did you like this story? Or what questions do you have? Asking questions is actually a powerful way of getting a child to develop, to learn, and to grow.
I love that. I love that. We are coming towards the end of our time together, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am and inspired by your wisdom and knowledge and the information that you so kindly share with our audience. I want to thank you, and I want to congratulate you for all your achievements.
Thank you.
What is next for Andy Canales? What happens is, where does he go after MIT, after MBA? What do you see in your future?
Well, I'm here for the next year. I just started my MBA program last year. And, after this, I'm either going to pursue an executive nonprofit leadership role or pivot to the private sector. And some of my interests there include venture capital, entrepreneurship, perhaps consulting. So I'm really taking this year to explore all of these areas and figure out which one of these is going to help me to ultimately 5, 10, 15 years from now be the most effective leader that I can be.
Incredible. Andy Canales, an educator, a philanthropist, a humanitarian, and an MIT graduate in the very, very near future. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's been an honor and a pleasure.